Hey, this is Monty back with another Hawkeye breakdown. This time for episode 4, Partners, am I right? And partners are a huge theme of this episode as we continue Kate and Clint's partnership as Clint continues to be haunted by the death of his last partner, Natasha Romanoff, aka the Black Widow. We begin where we left off, with Clint being held at sword point by Jack Duquesne, and unfortunately, we are not going the comic route with these two as they do not appear to recognize each other.
Oh my God, you're Archer.
No.
In the comics, Jacques Duquesne is the swordsman, a circus performer who trained Clint in his youth. He teeters between villain and hero and was even a terrible Avenger at one point in his career. You know, I would have thought with the hints they dropped earlier in the series with Clint saying he had a rough childhood that he would have, told Kate that he up and joined the circus. But alas, unfortunately, we will not be getting that backstory here. We are treated to an awkward table scene as Kate, Eleanor, Jack, and Clint are all sitting trying to figure out the situation. It is hilarious because the scene is like introducing your romantic partner to your parents for the first time, which fits in nicely with the theme of this episode, which is partnership. Clint notices that Jack was using his Ronin sword, which he manages to steal on his way out of the apartment. As Eleanor is walking Clint out, we get the first of many references to Black Widow this episode when Clint tries to explain that Kate is good at this stuff. Eleanor says so is Natasha Romanoff. We also see that there are 2 swords in the umbrella holder by the door. I know we are trying to emphasize Jack's obsession with swords, but this is actually pretty funny. What is fun to note is that the colors of the swords do match the colors of Jack's comic book costume as the swordsman. Clint asks his wife Laura in a text to run Sloan Ltd. and see what comes up, which is the first time in the MCU we get an implication that Laura Barton is anything more than a housewife and a mother, because how would she have the contacts or means to do that? But more on her a little later. We see Eleanor make a pretty suspicious phone call to an unknown person saying to get back to her, that it is urgent. I feel like this scene is here to continue to throw sus on Eleanor, making you think she is calling the boss, or the masked assailant we see later in the episode. However, I have a theory. What if it is possible that she's on the phone with Detective Cottle, a character from the comics with ties to Kate Bishop during her time in LA? We see him in the previews for the episode, but he's mysteriously absent. We know that Kate was supposed to meet with him, but she never did, so is it possible that he spoke with Eleanor instead, and he just happened to give her his number? Clint gets a call back from Laura, and she informs him that Sloan Ltd. Is a front for the tracksuits, with Jack Duquesne running money for the big guy. I wonder who the big guy could be.
I'm the kingpin.
Also, this presents us with a concrete connection between Jack and the tracksuits for the first time, meaning that if he does know what's going on in this company that he's the CEO of, he should have been aware of the attack on the auction in episode 1 of this series. Let's talk about Laura Barton. During the phone conversation, she brings up that something else may have been stolen from Avengers compound and taken during the auction, like the Rolex. We later learn from Clint in the episode that the watch belonged to someone he used to work with who has been out of operation for a while, and that watch can reveal their identity. Add all of that to the fact that Laura was able to find all the information on Sloan, speaks fluent Russian, and knows about the watch in the first place, and it is possible that it may belong to her. It is possible that she had worked with Clint as an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and had fallen in love with him during their time working together, with her giving up the life to raise their family. It is also possible that she took a new name when she left the organization, and that her original name is Bobby Morse, aka Mockingbird, who was Clint Barton's partner and wife in the main comics continuity. The family we were introduced to in Age of Ultron was based on the ultimate version of Hawkeye, who had a wife named Laura. Now, I know they used the Mockingbird name and Bobby Morse in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but I feel like the MCU has gone out of their way to say that that show, more than any of the other ones, is not in continuity. And if they did make Laura Barton an Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., she could have just used the codename Mockingbird or been one of the first people to use it, and it was passed on to Bobby Morse, the one that we know from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It would give the character of Laura a lot more depth than just being the wife/mother character. We hear Eleanor state that Kate has been obsessed with Hawkeye since the attack. We see her obsession with Clint begin in the flashback in episode 1. Eleanor and Jack talking, of course, about Kate like she is not even in the room, almost as if she has no say in any of it, looking at her like she is still a child. The song Jack puts on is chestnuts roasting on an open fire, because this show wants to make sure you know it is Christmas time by playing all of the Christmas songs, all of the times, all of the everythings. Something I love here is that we just learned that Jack may be potentially involved with the tracksuits and the big bad, but we contrast that with him being sweet and loving to Eleanor. Kate is almost even fooled because we see her realize she's not seen her mother this happy for a long time. It's the mystery of it all that keeps the show really really exciting because you really are left wondering who's a bad guy and who is not. It could really go multiple ways at this point. Eleanor, Jack, and Derek Bishop have all been bad in the comics at one point or another. We never saw Derek die, so he's still in play. So we can absolutely have a reveal where any of these characters is in fact evil. Jack even has an awkward dad-like habit of misremembering aphorisms, such as misquoting the one from Forrest Gump. Life is short, you never know what you're going to get. But while he's being laughed at by the Bishop women, he remarks that being laughed at by family is better than being alone on the holiday. And this makes Kate think about Clint and the fact that he is alone and not with his family, and of that phone call that he had with his son, so she goes to bring him some Christmas cheer. We see Clint icing himself up with some Daly's daiquiri and margarita mix, and this scene reminds me of the moments in the Matt Fraction comic where we see Clint after big battles where he's hurt and banged up. It shows us the humanity of the character that is represented very well in that comic. Kate comes bringing all the holiday cheer, movies, and the greatest gift of all, New York pizza and Lucky the Pizza Dog. Kate is trying to lift Clint's spirits, and she even remembers that that night was supposed to be his family's movie night. So she brings a bunch of Christmas movies. Among them are The Santa Claus, the movie about a Tim Allen-like man who murders Santa and steals his powers, and the Christmas edition of Die Hard? Not bad. We see Clint drinking out of a Thanos was right mug, which is a callback to the first episode, but also a reference to the comic where Clint is constantly drinking coffee out of a mug of the same exact color with an H on it. We cut to a holiday montage of Clint and Kate putting the pieces of everything together while they do all of the Christmas things. Ugly sweaters, tree decorating, alcohol. Okay, maybe not that last thing. It's at this point that we hear Kate and Clint talk about Robin Hooding. In the archery world, I would consider there to be two versions of Robin Hooding. With modern arrows, it is essentially sticking the tip of one arrow directly into the nock and shaft of the arrow in front. What they are talking about is a perfect Robin Hood, where you have a wood arrow that you perfectly split in half with a second arrow launched behind it. This is a near impossible shot to make on purpose, and most people in the archery community just associate this with dumb luck as opposed to high skill level, because that is how hard it is to accomplish. However, for someone like Clint to say they have done it multiple times on purpose makes his archery ability on a whole other level, and it is possible this is foreshadowing Kate doing it later on in the series. We see Clint dazzle Kate as he performs the coin trick, and yes, this is also something that he does in the comic. We even see him teach it to Kate in the episode, the same way we saw Barton teach it to Clint in the books. Speaking of the comic, we see Kate and Clint talk about the boomerang arrow. However, they have the reverse opinion of it as they do in the comics, where Clint thinks it is awesome and Kate thinks it's stupid. That is because in this show, the dynamic between Kate and Clint is the opposite of how it is in the comic. You have Kate making mistakes and being overly chatty and stubborn, while Clint is the cool-headed voice of reason. Kate asks Clint what was the best shot he ever took, and he instinctively says it was the shot he didn't take. You can see this was a gut shot reaction, and that he probably used to tell this story with such pride in his decision. However, this is the story of Budapest, about the first time he met Natasha Romanoff, and this was the first time he said it since her passing. On the TV, It's a Wonderful Life is playing, a movie about a man given a second chance at life and his family due to the help of a guardian angel who stops him from dying and gives him the hope to continue, which parallels what happened to Clint in a lot of ways, with Nat being the angel who gave him a second chance. The movie helps Kate to deduce that Clint lost his family in the blip and that he was indeed the Ronin. And we are thrust back into my favorite aspect of this series, which is the dueling dynamics of heroism by Kate and Clint. Kate is young and optimistic and believes he was a hero, whereas Clint is older, more experienced, turned cold by the things he has seen and done. He tells her he was not a hero, he was a weapon, aimed at the right people, by the right people. Most likely referring to Nick Fury during his S.H.I.E.L.D. days. Clint takes off his hearing aid and the sound cuts. As he lays there, he thinks back to some of his life's darkest moments. Losing his family in the blip, his time as Ronin, and Nat's death. The next morning we are shown a shot of the street, and we see that there is outside dining set up off of the curb on the street, which is something you would never see in New York ever, let alone in December in a world without COVID, which I believe was stated to have never occurred in the MCU due to the blip. Katie's wearing a shirt with a dog on it that says Laika in Russian. Laika was the first animal in space, a stray dog who was launched on a one-way trip to space on Sputnik 2. It is also relevant because it's a shirt that Kate wears in the comics during the final battle at the apartment in Bed-Stuy. Clint tells Kate they have to get the trick arrows back, and he sees that the tracer arrow has stopped moving in a police building. So Clint sends Kate to talk to the LARPers, who make their triumphant return this episode. Kate introduces herself as Clint's partner and best friend as she asks for the trick arrows, and they agree to help in exchange for a favor. Officer Wendy Conrad is the cop of the group who can get the arrows. Wendy Conrad being a minor Hawkeye villain from the comics who uses the name Bombshell, which we see later in the episode, referenced when she says her wife stitched that name into her bag for her. Clint meets up with Kate in one of the LARPers' apartments where we see a Dungeons & Dragons poster, a Tomb Raider game, and grills. Baking? Come on, man, the dude's name is Grills. Have him grill something, or at least someone call him out on it. Grills says the deal should be that they get them info and trick arrows, and the Hawkeyes get them material for new costumes. Kate agrees, but tells them to make 2 extra costumes for herself and Clint. I think it is safe to say that this is where those new costumes come from that they wear, and that Clint finally takes Kate's advice about branding. Now, I love this idea because Jeremy Renner said that all the stuff with the LARPers was sort of an homage to the great fan experience he has had. So the fact that in the MCU, essentially cosplayers are the ones who make their new suits is so cool of an idea to me and such a great nod to the community. The transmitter from the watch activated at the address 3715 Godfrey Road, which I believe is an address in New Jersey. We see Clint and Kate observing the address from a rooftop across the street. As Clint explains the plan, Kate leaves and is already about to enter the building before he realizes. She helps an old man with the groceries and acts crazy town in front of him, and she also complains about the annoyance of lugging a bow around, and I actually feel her on this one. Clint says that his bow is collapsible, which is a feature it had in the comics and one we first saw him use in the Avengers. Kate picks the lock to the apartment and there are boomerang-looking things on the wall, our second boomerang reference of the episode. So now I'm wondering if a boomerang arrow is in Kate's future. A bunch of strobe lights start to go off in the house, and this is a deaf alarm system, a system used for signaling the hearing impaired of emergencies such as break-ins or fires. She finds the Rolex from the Avengers compound very easily, almost like too easily, as it's coincidentally right next to notes about Clint Barton's family. All of their names and the ages of all of them except Nathaniel. Almost makes it seem like this was a trap to draw him out. A trap set, perhaps, by the person we see later in the episode. Clint realizes what the alarm was and tells Kate to get out of the apartment, that it belongs to Maya. Clint and Kate are both attacked, with Kate facing Maya and Clint facing a mystery opponent he thinks is Maya. Clint fires a zipline arrow for Kate to make her escape because trick arrows are trick arrows, and as we learned from experience, trick arrows are in fact dope. Maya follows soon after and kicks the mystery attacker, who returns the favor by hitting her with Red Widow bites. Yes, this is a Black Widow. Yes, this is Yelena Belova, the adopted sister of Natasha Romanoff, last seen in the Black Widow movie post-credit scene. With that kick, it is fair to say that Maya and Yelena are not on the same team, both hunting Clint for their own reasons. I just want to point out that the masked look with the green lighted goggles that Yelena has in this episode is a reference to a time in the comic books when she went by the Super Adaptoid persona. We see Yelena perform the classic Widow pose, just like Natasha used to do.
It's a fighting pose. You're a total poser.
Another interesting thing to note is that Yelena has the same kind of hairstyle that Natasha had in the Black Widow movie. Maybe another way that she's paying homage to her late sister. She is skilled and aggressive in battle, but we see her make sure to secure Kate before kicking her off the roof. This shows that she is not here for collateral damage. She just wants to kill Clint Barton. Clint panics before realizing that Kate is okay, and as he looks over the edge, the position that Kate is in mirrors exactly Natasha's as she fell to her death in Avengers Endgame. Kate even says, "Pull me up," where Natasha told Clint to let her go. I have to point out that Jeremy Renner was absolutely fantastic in this episode. From beginning to end, there are moments in this episode where he really gets to show off his ability as an actor. Kate has a shot on Yelena, but chooses not to take it, which again mirrors the conversation Clint has with her about Natasha. The most important shot was not the one he took, but the one he didn't. Clint is suffering after the fight because he relived one of his worst moments, almost losing a partner the way he lost his last one. This episode was so absolutely fantastic in building to this moment because it focused on the partnership dynamic throughout, with constant mentions of Natasha, with the episode ending with Clint ending his partnership with Kate. What twists and turns await as we approach the final act of the series? I have some ideas, but until then, why don't you give this video a huge like if you enjoyed it, and comment down below what are some of your theories on what's going to be happening next on Hawkeye. If you're not subscribed yet, you totally should be, and hit that notification bell so you are up to date with all of our latest videos. Until next time, guys,